Some rooms are just walls and a door. But some remember you. Room 309 was supposed to be empty. No patients, no records, no reason to exist. And yet, when I opened that door, it knew my name. Room 309. A detective horror mystery. Written by Detective Stories by Asma. Joel Carter arrived at the Merrill Ridge Hotel on a Tuesday. Alone. Just a duffel bag, a laptop, and a headache that had been with him for 3 days straight. He told the front desk he needed a place to finish his novel. What he didn't say. What he couldn't say was that he hadn't written a word in 6 months, that every night he woke up drenched in sweat, haunted by dreams that didn't feel like dreams, and that something inside him was coming undone. Room 309, the clerk said, sliding a tarnished key across the desk. End of the hall. Don't mind the flickering lights. We're still fixing the wiring. Joel just nodded. He noticed. The clerk didn't smile. The room was colder than the hallway, pale walls, one window, an ancient ceiling fan that hummed like a dying insect. Set his bag down and stared at the mirror, at a long vertical crack, almost like a scar. It was the feeling that got him. The moment he stepped in, something in his gut clenched tight, like the room had just exhaled, like it knew he'd arrived. That night, Joel didn't write. He sat at his laptop, watching the cursor blink. 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 At 2:14 a.m., he heard the first noise, a soft knock at his door from inside the wall. He told himself it was the plumbing, or maybe he was just tired and he couldn't sleep. At breakfast, the hotel clerk gave him a strange look. "How was your guest?" she asked. Joel blinked. "What guest?" "The woman. She came up to see you last night, around midnight." Joel felt his mouth go dry. "I was alone," he said. The clerk's smile faded. "No, sir. I saw her on the camera. Floor 3. Blonde hair, red coat. She went into your room." But Joel didn't remember that. Didn't remember anything after 11. The woman had a name. Evelyn Price, a local therapist. Booked in under Joel's name. Never checked. Never came back down. Within 24 hours, her sister filed a missing persons report. The local police arrived fast. Too fast. They searched Joel's room, questioned him, bagged his laptop and phone, kept saying the same thing. "I don't remember her. I didn't see her," but they weren't convinced. Because tucked at the bottom of Joel's suitcase was a lock of blonde hair tied with a red ribbon. And Joel, he had no idea how it got there. That night, they let him return to room 309, begged them to let him leave, but the investigation was ongoing. When the dreams returned, a woman's voice whispering his name, fingers on his shoulders in the dark, a mirror that didn't show his reflection. At 3 a.m., Joel woke up screaming, not because of what he said, because he couldn't remember what he'd seen. His notebook was open, a single line written in his handwriting. "She's still here. She never left." That's when I was called in. Detective Abner Ryan. 17 years chasing shadows in places just like this. I've seen clean murders, messy ones no one could explain. But room 309. It was different. It didn't feel like a crime scene. It felt like a warning. And Joel Carter? He wasn't just a suspect. It was a question mark, one I didn't know how to answer. Before I left the room, I checked the mirror, and for just a second. I swear to God, I saw someone standing behind it. When I turned around, the room was empty. When I first met Joel Carter, he looked like a man trying to hold himself together with invisible thread, pale, drenched in sweat, eyes twitching like he hadn't slept in days. He sat across from me, fingers tapping a rhythm only he could hear. And when I asked about Evelyn Price, he said 4 words I'll never forget. I don't remember her. I laid out her photo, a smiling face, blonde hair, red scarf. As his flickered, he leaned closer. She looks familiar, he whispered, but I don't know from where. That was the first red flag, and then came the second. Didn't recognize the name Evelyn Price, but he had written it in his own notebook. The journal was filled with pages of cryptic notes, dialogues from a story he didn't remember writing, and a chilling entry dated 3 days before Evelyn vanished. She comes in the red coat, smells like lavender, doesn't scream until the mirror breaks. Joel swore he had no memory of it, no memory of writing the scene, no memory of meeting. And yet, every word matched what the hotel clerk had described. It wasn't just fiction, it was a confession hiding in a story. I returned to the Merrill Hotel. The building itself was like something stuck between decades. Peeling wallpaper, moth-bitten curtains, chandeliers coated in dust. I spoke to the night clerk again. She stood stiff, fingers trembling slightly as she spoke. That woman, Evelyn, I saw her go in, 3rd floor. Midnight. She never came out. Not on my watch. Was she alone? I asked. The clerk hesitated, looked over her shoulder. Yes and no. Sometimes, when you look at room 309 too long, you feel like someone's watching you from the inside. One of the former maids had quit just a few weeks before Evelyn's disappearance. I tracked her down. A woman named Isla Hart didn't want to talk at first. Said she'd buried it. When I mentioned room 309, she froze. I cleaned that room once, she said. Only once. There was writing on the mirror, but it wasn't in marker or lipstick. I asked what it was. She swallowed hard, looked away. It was in something dark, dried. I didn't want to know. I asked why she left the job. She leaned in, voice barely a whisper. Because the second time I opened that door, I heard breathing. The room was empty. I ran a deeper check on Joel Carter, no criminal record, quiet life. Mild success as a horror novelist, but there was a detail that didn't sit right. A legal name change 8 years ago. Prior identity, Ethan Rayner. That name matched a psychiatric file from a closed mental facility. The same facility that used to own the property where Merrill Ridge Hotel now stands. Coincidence? Or something more? In 1989, the Merrill Ridge was shut down as a psychiatric hospital after 3 patients died under what the board called isolated, unexplained incidents. The files were sealed. I got access to one photo. A black and white image of a padded room, scribbled above the bed frame in jagged ink. Don't let him out. The room number? 309. I returned to room 309 alone. Manager gave me 5 minutes. Door creaked open like it had lungs. The mirror was still cracked. Light bulb above flickered. I moved to the nightstand. Something metallic caught my eye. A key, tiny, rusted. Behind the dresser, I found a vent. Inside, an envelope. Photographs. All women. All gone. And one of them, taken from behind, looking in the mirror, was Evelyn Price. This wasn't just about Joel anymore. It wasn't just about Evelyn. This room had seen more than its share of shadows, and something was still living in them. Room 309 doesn't just hide bodies, it hides memories. Question now isn't what Joel did. The question is, what is room 309 doing to him? Time doesn't move normally in room 309. Sometimes it runs ahead, other times it stops. After I left the hotel with Evelyn Price's photo in my hand, I returned to the station. The timestamp said it was 3:50. When I checked my phone, it was past 6. I had no memory of the missing hours. And the strangest thing? My voicemail had a new message from my own number, a whisper. Just one sentence. Don't trust what you remember. Joel was placed under psychiatric observation after his second breakdown. I visited him the next morning. He looked empty and angry. Not scared, just hollow, like someone had scooped the soul out and left the skin. They keep asking about Evelyn, he said, but they should be asking about the room. Why? I asked. He looked at me. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed, because it remembers things I've never done. I asked what he meant. He leaned forward, whispered, I'm dreaming memories that don't belong to me. And each night there's more. More of what? He looked past me, into the wall. I reviewed hotel surveillance footage again. This time, I noticed something no one else had caught. At 2:00, Evelyn enters the hallway and walks to room 309. Pauses, looks directly at the camera. Indy smiles, enters the room. The door closes. He hears the twist. At 12:04 a.m., exactly 1 minute later, Joel Carter walks down the same hallway and enters room 309. Except he claimed he was asleep in bed at that time. In the timestamp, it blinks, distorts. The same minute, 2 people, 1 room, only one ever came out. That night, Joel had another dream, was standing in the hallway, holding Evelyn's red scarf. The hotel was silent, all silent. He reached room 309. Door opened before he touched inside. He saw himself, another version of Joel, sitting at the desk. Writing, walked closer. The other Joel didn't look, just kept writing. And what he was writing was Joel's dream, word for word. Then the other Joel looked and whispered, You don't belong here. You never did. I went back to the archives, dug deeper into the old Asylum records. Most had been destroyed. I found something hidden behind mislabeled files, a collection of old cassette tapes. Labeled Whisper Files, Patient 309R. I played one. A woman's voice filled the room, soft, frightened. He watches from the mirror. He writes in my head, I don't know what's real anymore. What's your name? The doctor asked. Silence. Then, I used to be Evelyn. He wrote me out. I checked myself into room 309 that night, alone. No team. No backup. I wanted to understand. The room welcomed me like a mouth welcomes a scream. I turned on the light at the desk. There was a single page on the table, typed. Faint. Read. Detective Abner Ryan arrived at 9:14 p.m. He will not leave. I blinked. The text changed. He will forget his name, will become the next chapter. And then the typewriter next to me began to type on its own. I stood up, backed away, looked in the mirror, and saw myself. Smiling. Wasn't smiling. Room 309 doesn't just trap people, rewrites them. The question now isn't who Joel Carter is, who he used to be. Before the room decided to make him someone else, there are stories that write themselves. Room 309 is not one of them. It rewrites me piece by piece until nothing of the original remains. I stayed only one night, and when I woke up, my notebook was full. I hadn't written a word, every page was in my handwriting. Dialogue, scene descriptions, in a paragraph that made my blood freeze. The detective will resist. He'll investigate. I'll think he's in control. By page 43, he'll shoot the patient. Page 43 was tomorrow. Joel Carter's condition was getting worse. I no longer responded to his name. Ethan, the doctors called. Ethan Rayner, he didn't flinch. But at 3:09 a.m., he stood up from his bed and began to write on the walls, over and over again, I'm pink, in blood. Don't read the last page. When they sedated him, he whispered something strange. He's rewriting my ending and giving me a death scene. I asked who he meant. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You." Back at my office, things stopped making sense. What files on Evelyn Price? Gone. Video evidence? Corrupted. My voice notes. Rewritten. One now ended with my own voice whispering. He was never real. I checked the hotel guest logs. Joel Carter's name was missing. The manager claimed there was never a guest in 309. Room 309 still existed. When I went back, I found something in a mirror. This time, there was writing on, no lipstick. Not in blood, to my handwriting. Detective Abner Ryan dies in the next chapter. The room's influence was no longer confined to 309. I had followed it into my mind, into my home, into my sleep. I began to hear the typewriter at night, even when I wasn't near it. I dreamed of scenes I had not yet lived, conversations that hadn't happened, rooms I hadn't entered. One night, I woke up with ink on my hands, my journal open beside me, and a new line added. When he reads this, he'll start bleeding. I didn't believe until blood began dripping from my nose. I visited the town's oldest librarian, a woman named Margaret Holloway, had worked at the asylum decades ago. Room 309, she said, eyes glassy. That place was never meant to be reopened. She told me about Dr. Alaric Voss, the man who built the hospital, a psychiatrist obsessed with memory manipulation, who believed the human mind could be rewritten like a book. He tested it on himself, she whispered, said he could erase pain, create something else, started writing in him. I asked what happened to Dr. Voss, looked at me and said, "You already know, you are him." I don't know what's real anymore. My past has holes in it. It's don't match. Names I thought I knew fade from memory, and every night, I find myself drawn back to room 309. The door opens. The typewriter waits. Indy now, there's only one page left blank. It is titled, The Detective's Last Memory. I'm afraid to read. I'm more afraid not, because if I don't finish this chapter, the room will. I told myself I wouldn't come back, that I'd close the file, that some things are better left unwritten. And silence is the loudest scream. And room 309 was calling me again, not with voices, but with absence. Joel had disappeared. The hospital was being quietly decommissioned, and the final page of my notebook remained blank. So I came back. Alone. At night. The hallway was longer than I remembered. Time didn't pass here. It circled like a drain. Room 309's door was open, as if it had been expecting me. The air inside was cold and smelled of ink and mildew. The room had changed again. This time, the walls weren't covered in mold or symbols. They were covered in scenes, my memories, painted like murals. There I was as a child, crying at a funeral I couldn't name. There I was holding a badge I never earned. And then I saw Evelyn, trapped in a loop, smiling, screaming, vanishing. Then Joel, writing on the wall. Page 43, over and over, in blood. I turned to leave, but the door was gone. And the corner of the room, the typewriter had begun to click again. I wasn't typing. I was writing on its speed, and it was telling me Joel Carter's story. Not a madman, a killer, a whistleblower. A young hospital orderly named Ethan Rayner. Ethan had seen what Dr. Voss was doing, saw the experiments on memory wipes. He tried to warn the public. Before he could escape, he was caught. And Dr. Voss, me, rewrote his memory. That's why Joel Carter had never made sense, because Joel Carter was a lie, written over Ethan Rayner's pain. The guilt came crashing in. For the first time, I remembered everything. I remembered doing it. I wasn't a detective. I was the monster. A cold wind passed through the room, and suddenly, Evelyn was there. A ghost. Not a memory, something in between. Stood beside the window, holding a photograph. I recognized it instantly. What was it? Oh, Voss. You told me you could take the pain away, she said. But you didn't erase it. You buried it. She placed the photo on the desk beside the typewriter. That's all room 309 is, a graveyard for guilt. I asked her how she was still here, looked at the blank page in my notebook. Because you never let me leave. The typewriter began to shake. It typed. The detective will resist. He will try to undo the story. But stories end when they are accepted. You are not Abner Ryan. You are the villain pretending to solve his own crime. I stared at the final page. My hand trembled as I reached for the pen. I could feel the room fighting back. Whispered memories I had long forgotten. A boy I left behind, a woman I used, patients who trusted me. All gone, all buried in room 309. And still, I couldn't let go. I picked up the page waited. I wrote. Room 309 releases the memories it holds. It returns what it took. And it forgets the name Dr. Alaric Voss. The typewriter went still. The room sighed. Evelyn smiled, and then she vanished. The walls began to fade. My name faded too. I walked out of room 309, off as a detective, off the doctor. No one, a blank slate, a final page. They turned the asylum into a museum. They never reopened room 309. He remembered what happened there, except me. And now, you. Some stories don't have endings, they wait, in quiet rooms, for someone to return. I left room 309 behind, but part of me never walked out. Maybe you'll hear it too one day. When the door creaks open. If you're still here, you've already entered room 309. Let me know what you saw inside. Comment below. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe. There are more rooms to open, and not all of them let you leave.